Joining me is Barry Gardiner, the UK MP who has come here in Dubai for the COP28. Sir, UK is playing a pivotal role along with India for this COP28. How do you see both the countries going forward and taking the partnership along in that particular area?
Well, look, you'll be aware that this is the stocktake COP. It's really important that we assess all the commitments, all the promises that we've made, because what we know is that those promises do not keep us within the 1.5 degree envelope. That's the threshold, and we are at this rate going to exceed it. If you look at the recent Intergovernmental Panel report, the sixth assessment report, it's very clear that actually by the end of the century, if we went on as we are, we would be at 3.2 degrees. Now that creates huge shocks, not only physical shocks in terms of our agriculture, in terms of floods, in terms of drought, in terms of famine. It also creates huge shocks in the financial sector. It would be a collapse of business confidence. It would be a collapse of the insurance industry. Totally unsustainable. So it's really important that India has taken a clear lead with the work that she did in the G8. Leadership of the smaller nations, bringing them together, making sure that their voice is being heard, the small island developing states, making sure that their voice at the table is really powerful. Now, we saw at the last COP the question of loss and damage and the way in which that finally came to the fore. But now, of course, it's the issue of money and who's going to administer that money. Who's going to pay that money? And is that fund going to be held by the World Bank or not? There are many of the smaller countries who are saying, look, we don't have the confidence in the World Bank to be the development bank administering that. So I think these are issues that I've no doubt Prime Minister Modi, when he arrives tomorrow, will want to be addressing. He will want to be showing the leadership that he did at the G8. He'll be wanting to remain, as it were, the champion of those nations and giving them a very powerful voice at the COP, because they're the ones who are feeling the extremities of climate change now. This is for the wealthy northern countries. Many people there feel, oh, climate change, yes, we need to do something about it, but it's not an existential threat at the moment. For these countries, it is.
It is an existential threat, and also, I believe, for a lot of Western European countries, if things work like the way it is, and if the climate change is as bad as it turned out to be, then it may impact them also. Tell us more about how UK is working on dealing with this such kind of threat.
Well, I think one of the most important things that's happening in the UK is London as a financial centre. And you will know that in terms of green finance, for the past 4 years in a row, London has been above New York, above Stockholm, above all the other locations as the most important place where you can get access to green finance, sustainable finance, green bonds and so on. That is really important, because if you look at what is predicted to take place over a very short space of time, this is by 2036. A recent report came out from LSE and the Grantham Institute, endorsed by Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, former governor of the Bank in Canada. They've said that actually we're looking at between 11 and $14 trillion worth of assets that would become stranded assets, liabilities that are no longer worth anything. So if you look at that and see the way we now need to turbocharge green finance, the allocation of capital to renewable sources, the allocation of capital to make sure that we are getting the reforestation, making sure that we're getting all the natural solutions that exist to climate change, then this is a really big role, I think, for London and the UK.
Coming back to India and how Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership has been, has given voice to the global south. Now, how you already mentioned that it's a huge thing, but a lot has to be done further. How do you see Prime Minister Modi's leadership shaping the voice of the global south and bringing both developed and the developing countries together?
Well, I think that's really important because obviously India, the transition that India has made under his leadership and over the past really couple of decades has been enormous. And we're seeing India now not just as a regional superpower, but as a global superpower. So to have that powerful a voice is really important for those countries who don't have that same clout at the table.
What are the main 5 things you believe will be up for discussion in this COP28? That will be, rattling a lot of people.
The main 5 things. Okay, look, finance. That is absolutely key, and we need to see the commitments in terms of finance. Loss and damage is another one, because those countries who are facing existential threat need the reassurance that they are going to get the support that's required. In terms of the global stocktake, I think there's some very hard conversations to have. But, you can have a hard conversation with another country. You can't have a hard conversation with the science. And the science is very clear. We are headed in the wrong direction. We are going too fast towards that 1.5 degree threshold. And if we exceed it, then the consequences for all our lives are going to be devastating. So it's really important that we begin to align everything that we do with what is the scientific necessity. I think there's another issue, though, that could well come to the fore at the COP, and that is, how do we take the public with us? Because, it's all very well government setting targets, it's all very well government setting policy frameworks, even something like the GFANZ, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, very important as it was in COP26, setting those benchmarks for the corporate sector to make sure that there's transparency, that there's that in line with the task force for climate-related financial disclosures. All of that very important. But as I say, you cannot argue with the science. And what we have to do is we have to bring people with us. Yes, set the frameworks, but actually enable people to understand the real opportunities and the benefits that come from making that transition now. Because at the moment, the conversation is very often framed in terms of, if you don't do this, you will suffer. Yeah. And actually what people need to understand is, hey, this is going to make my life better. This is going to reduce my energy bills. This is actually going to be a net benefit for me. I want to go with this. I want to embrace it, instead of feeling that it's something that's being imposed upon you. So I think public acceptability, getting not only the supply side right, but the demand side right, is going to be a critical issue as well.
Do you believe that that's the major problem that the developed countries are facing? They are probably saying something in the boardroom, but when they go back and that's not happening. Work on ground is not happening.
No, I think that's unkind, actually. I think there's a lot of really good work that is going on at boardroom level, and all those companies who've now signed up to the Financial Alliance, all those companies who are saying, yeah, we're going to do the reporting that is set out about sustainability, about climate change, about nature-related financial disclosures. There is really good work going on, and that's to be welcomed. I think
is it enough?
Very often the business community can be ahead of governments. Excuse me. The business community know that it really matters to get your supply chain right. And if you haven't made sure you've got that alignment the whole way down your supply chain, then actually your business is going to suffer. You don't want those unexpected shocks. You don't want that disruption in your business. And climate change is the biggest disruptor this planet has ever seen.
Another thing I want to ask you, you mentioned the climate finance. Developed countries pledged $100 billion. We probably haven't yet reached the 50% level somewhere down the line. Do you believe that it's high time that this COP28 rectify that?
Well, look, it should have been rectified a long time ago. That's the reality of it. I think, in fairness, there was a lack of clarity about exactly where that funding was going to come, how it was going to be administered, how it was going to be put through, because it wasn't all going to be public funds. So I think there is a real problem there, but it's one that can easily be overcome. If you look at the funding flows that are going through into, take green bonds. The first green bond was only issued in 2007, right? Now, here we are, 15, 16 years later, and we have 4.2 trillion worth of bonds and debt associated with green and sustainable outcomes. So this is a huge market. It is powering forward in terms of getting us to where we need to be. And actually what we're going to see is over the next few years, that is going to turbocharge to about 5 times what it is at the moment.
Last question, sir. How do you see the developing countries, especially UK and India, coming together and making this COP28 a major success?
Well, look, we know that India and the UK played a huge joint role in Glasgow 2 years ago. That was when Prime Minister Modi announced, yes, he made the pledge about the Green Grid Alliance, building on the work of One Sun, One World, One Grid. And I think that is something which now needs to be given deeper roots at this COP, where the UK and India will be working very closely together. But I think it's also an opportunity for us to begin to talk about the way in which we should be aligning our financial sector and making sure that this is being driven through the boardroom, through companies, through businesses. And to do that, governments need to set the right corporate framework. So this is about changing from voluntary reporting to mandatory reporting. Now, if Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Sunak were to get together and insist on that, that would be something.
That will be something. So that was UK MP Gardiner saying that it's high time that both countries come together. In fact, all the countries in the world need to come together to make sure that COP28 become a success and we keep up with the project of 1.5 degrees Celsius on road and make sure that it works for a clean and a greener planet. With Camera Person Rajesh, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India.